Buenos días, buenas tardes.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this results presentation. As usual, we will first hear from our Deputy Chairman, José Manuel Inchausti, and then our CFO will give you some additional details on the numbers. Thank you very much, Javier. Almost good afternoon by now. Thank you very much for joining us in this earnings presentation for Mapfre's first semester of 2025, which we have just approved this very morning in the Board of Directors. They include the most relevant business metrics, and as we have done since the new accounting standards came into force, first we will report on the global results of the businesses and the units with the insurance accounting principles current in each country adjusted in like-for-like terms, and then we will present the most relevant indicators of the group under the international accounting standards based on the financial statements of Mapfre SA, which we have sent to the CNMV today, and the comparison between both accounting standards. As you can see, the company has continued to improve its profitability with its earnings up, or profit up 23%, earnings at 517 million euros. Premiums grow over 5.3%. In fact, it would have been double that without the exchange rate effect versus the euro. But in any case, we're saying that in the first half of the year, just in premiums, we've had almost 16 billion euros in revenues. Our ROE is above 12%. And what's more important, we have ended the crisis of the auto or motor segment, which began with the inflation and the pandemic and the subsequent inflation. This last quarter, we were already breaking even, and we've continued to make a profit this quarter with improvements in the few markets where we still have difficulties in this segment. Macroeconomic conditions remain stable. The difficulties in this segment will now be a thing of the past for Mapfre. And by regions, we see very high profitability in Iberia and LATAM, especially Brazil, increasing its contribution. In North America, we continue with substantial improvements in profitability, as we have seen in the last months, and in EMEA, where we still see some impact of the auto insurance crisis, we are back in the black, and as you can see, premiums are up over 12%. And finally, Mapfre Re, which includes our reinsurance and large risk business, has delivered earnings of almost 150 million with prudent reserves. And total revenues, as you can see in the next slide, for the company were of over 18.7 billion euros. I've already mentioned profit and premium volumes, but I'd like to emphasize the non-life combined ratio, which is at an excellent 93.1% after continuous improvement in the first 6 months of the year. Our CFO will now give you more details on the P&L, but I do want to once again emphasize that 2025 has been a very good year for Mapfre. The first 6 months have been very positive, continuing on target with our current strategic plan. As I've said, we're growing in a stable way in every region, in every segment, although the exchange rate is having an impact on premium growth in euros. But in local currencies, we're seeing strong growth in most markets. But in any case, our business model and our strategic plan enable us to face the second half of the year with a positive, optimistic outlook. And now José Luis will give you more details. Thank you very much, José Manuel, and good afternoon all. This is the breakdown of the premiums, which you can see without the impact of the appreciation of the euro would have grown about 10%. The non-life ratio is at an excellent 93.1% for the whole group. Premiums, non-life, are at 15.95 billion euros. That's up 2.3% in auto and 4.1% in health and casualty. Also, general insurance is at similar levels to the first 6 months of 2024, and we have seen growth in our reinsurance premiums. In our life business, as you can see in the chart, there's been a significant increase in the life protection and life savings segment, plus 30%, with total premiums in that segment rising to almost 3.7 billion. There's growth in both individuals and groups underwriting in this period. And finally, there's been a drop in life risk because of the depreciation of currencies. And here you can see very briefly our position with regards to investments and cash. Our portfolio is stable with 46.45 billion euros. The asset structure has not experienced significant changes in the first half of the year. Most of it is fixed income with over 83.3% of the total. But I do want to refer to the excellent performance of off-balance assets, particularly investment funds, which have grown 19.5%, basically because of the excellent performance in Brazil and Spain. On the slide, you can see all the information about premiums and earnings by business units and regions. Let me review the most relevant. Iberian premiums above 6 billion euros, that's up 13% year on year. Of these, 5 billion are Spain, which is also experiencing double-digit growth, up 14%, whilst in Portugal, they're down versus the same period of the previous year because of that one-off issue we had in the first half of 2024. The non-life business up 4.7% with good performance of all segments. General insurance up 5.8%, driven by all business with significant growth in businesses. A positive trend in auto also, with an increase of 3.7%, reflecting an improvement in technical management. It's important to mention the improvement in the combined ratio in auto in Spain, 7.7 points improvement, and currently at 98.4%, where the region's ratio is now at 96% at the end of the semester. Also, we are seeing a strong growth in life premiums, up 34%, because of the important issuance of savings products, both for large groups and individuals. As for its contribution to profit, our net profit is at 239 million euro. That's 42% more than in the same semester of the previous year. Spain contributing 235 million, and Brazil premiums were 201 million euros. That's down 11%, but mostly due to the depreciation of the real. The profit, however, is at 131 million euros. That's 8% more. The combined ratio in Brazil has continued to improve and is now at an excellent 72.3%, whilst the ROE is the highest in the group with approximately 27%. The rest of LATAM has also had an excellent semester, and its contribution rises to 93 million euros. In North America, the premium level has remained constant and our profit has risen to 60 million. That's 48% higher than in the same semester last year, all of it with a combined ratio of 96.5%, driven by an additional improvement in auto insurance. Now I'd like to refer to the significant improvements in EMEA, where premiums are up 12%, to 847 million, with significant improvements in most markets, which has improved profitability to a positive level in the region. The combined ratio in EMEA has improved from 113.3% to 107.5%, especially thanks to strong improvement in Germany. Also, the reinsurance business 3.343 billion euros in premiums, affected by currency depreciation, mostly the US dollar, contributes 132 million euros to the group's profit. Combined ratio is at 96.1%. Mapfre Global Risk, which is our global risk unit, has seen a 4% increase in premiums and contributes 17 million to our net profit. And finally, Mauri, which is our assistance unit, is also contributing to our profit. On the screen, you can see the evolution of our combined ratios and ROEs per regions and units. In the table on the top, you can see the significant improvements in the main areas with return to profitability in auto, as we mentioned. And the regions, we continue to see strong recovery in Iberia with a 4% improvement, with a combined ratio which is at 96%, driven by balance in the motor or auto segment in this region. Also, very good performance in health and casualty and in general insurance. In Brazil, combined ratio is also excellent, below 73%. We've also seen significant improvement in the rest of LATAM with 83% overall. And as you can see, with positive ratio improvements in all the other units and regions. As I mentioned, EMEA is still improving and close to break-even due to the significant improvements in the combined ratio. And in the next quarters, we will see that it will continue to come down thanks to the technical actions taken for motor. As a result of all of this, the combined ratio for Mapfre has continued to improve and is currently at 93%. On the right-hand side, you can see Mapfre's ROE, which is 12.2%, which is higher, which would be more than 13% without the actions we took to strengthen the balance sheet in Germany in Q3 last year, especially Brazil, increasing the overall percentage for LATAM above 18%. Finally, you can see our Solvency II ratio at the end of the first semester. As you can see, it's at 205.6% and fully in line with our reference framework of plus minus 25 points, around 200%. In the screen, you can see the most relevant IFRS numbers and the combination and the comparison with these other accounting standards, which I will remind you only apply to Mapfre because it's a listed insurance group. The group subsidiaries still have to report their financial information on the basis of the insurance accounting standards in each country. In general, the figures show similar values and trends according to both sets of criteria and demonstrate, in both cases, profitable growth and improvements in Mapfre's efficiency and profitability. And that's all from me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. José Manuel, you have the floor again. Thank you very much. So before we finish, I'd like to share with you the roadmap towards the targets in our strategic plan. Now that we're exactly halfway through the plan, in the first 18 months, we are in line with all of our targets, except for premium growth, which, as I've said, have been affected by the exchange rate versus the euro. The company's focus is business profitability, which, as you can see, we are achieving. We are at a turning point in the global economy with persisting effects of the geopolitical conflicts with markets and countries focused on tariffs. We'll have to see what happens with all of this uncertainty. But in any case, as I've pointed out, we have a very diversified business model which protects us against external circumstances and allows us to continue to grow profitably. The bottom, you can see that we are within the target range for our solvency ratio, our leverage ratio, and our payout. And of course, we are very grateful to investors for the trust that they have demonstrated in our strategy. In this semester, as you can see in the screen, we have been one of the European insurers whose share price has risen the most in the capital markets, above the IBEX and the stocks insurance indexes. And we believe that in spite of all the uncertainties I've just mentioned, the company has sufficiently favorable position to continue increasing its market cap. I'll conclude by saying again that it has been a good semester for Mapfre, with improving profitability, with significant improvements in all lines, including motor, and in all units and regions, including also EMEA. As well as the profitability, our combined ratio is at an excellent 93.1%. We would have to go back to the first quarter of 2008 to see a similar combined ratio, that is, well before the severe financial crisis which affected the economic trends of this century and everything that came after, as you know. But the combined ratio is a metric which shows the technical solidity and the business positioning of the company. We know that there is lots of uncertainty, but we're very confident in the company's prospects, and we're also very optimistic for the second half of the year. Thank you very much for being here and following this presentation. And now, Javier, let's open the Q&A. Yes, thank you very much. Let's start with the questions. We've received 3 so far. We're going to hear the first question from Rafael Serra from Síguenos, who's saying, the lifeline is tending towards consolidation because of the effect of hospital concentration. Is Mapfre planning any M&A transaction in the short or medium term in this line? Well, I'll answer that question, Rafael. As you know, the health line in Spain is already highly concentrated. The top 5 companies, which include Mapfre, have 70% of the market. It's true that there's also many companies that have very small market shares, which may, of course, suffer the effects of this hospital concentration you mentioned. Mapfre is in a comfortable position. Of course, we always analyze any opportunity that might develop, but we are focused on profitable organic growth, and we're comfortable with the current concentration levels. Rafa Sierra from Síguenos is also asking how geopolitical tensions are affecting Mapfre's earnings, particularly given currency fluctuations. José Luis is going to answer that. Thank you very much for the question, Rafael. Of course, geopolitical tensions are affecting us all one way or another, particularly those companies that have a significant part of their business in international markets. Mapfre operates in over 40 countries. We have a dominant position in Latin America. And the volatility that we've experienced in the currencies, particularly the dollar, and then the knock-on effect for other emerging currencies is having an impact. As we mentioned in the presentation, it's subtracted 5 points in the growth of our premiums, which have nevertheless grown above 5%. But again, I would say that you must point out that Mapfre's business model is highly diversified by business types and geographies. And so if during the first 6 months of the year we've managed to offset the impacts of currency volatilities, we hope that there might be some return to normal in the coming 6 months, which would improve our results even further. But in any case, volatility seems to be the rule nowadays, and we're just waiting to see what happens with the tariffs proposed by the American administration. The latest news we've heard, which would be at around 15%, might actually be good news, I think, for markets, and especially for currencies. Thank you. A question from Julio Muñoz from Capital Madrid. Actually, 2 questions. Given the excellent trends in the sector and the numbers you achieved in Q1, could we say that Mapfre might obtain a profit above €1 billion in 2025 without taking into account its partners? Well, let me answer that question. Mapfre doesn't have any specific published profit target. What we're doing is to work hard. We're moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, we're seeing an improvement in technical management in all regions and in all our business lines. And, well, what I can tell you is that at the end of the first semester, we're doing well. But there's still a long way to go till the end of the year. We'll have to wait and see. But we don't have a disclosed target for our profit. And Julio is also asking, his second question, if you could give him more details about how tariffs are affecting the currencies in the countries where you operate, and whether you expect improvements in the second semester as trade agreements are reached. Well, thank you, José Luis. Well, tariffs for international insurers have only an indirect impact. We don't export goods. We provide services. And since we have local companies in all the countries where we operate, the effect is mitigated. Nevertheless, of course, we must admit that since we're seeing so much volatility in currencies and markets, just to give you the example of Brazil, where there is a threat of 50% tariff increase, that could have an impact, a significant impact. But if there's one thing we've learned in the last 3 or 4 months is that you have to wait and see, because one thing is what they say they're going to do, and quite another what they really end up doing. But in any case, we have a highly diversified business model, as we've mentioned, by geographies and business lines, and we have experience in operating in international markets for over 40 years. So I think the company is well positioned to deal with this type of uncertainty. Thank you. Question from Aitor Caballero from El Economista. Now that we're seeing a return to profit in the auto segment in Spain, do you expect any important commercial campaign this next semester to improve your market share and become the leading company again? Well, there I would say that we like to approach things prudently. So I don't like the term decided campaign. In each country, we're in 40 countries. We're the leading company in LATAM. We are the biggest Spanish insurer. And if you look at the ICEA ranking, we're well above our next closest competitor. And we do want to be market leader in each market in which we operate. Having said that, we are a global insurer. We are a leading global insurer. And in the case of Spain, so far, our focus has been on the profitability of the business, particularly of the auto segment. And now that we are back in the black, we will be able to pay more attention to commercial strategies and to customer loyalty aspects to retain the most profitable customers, but we will not be carrying out any bold campaign which might not fit with this strategy. Well, we don't have any more questions coming in, so this is the end of the presentation. But as usual, in the Investor Relations and Communication Department, we are always available. And those of you who are going on holidays, I'd like to wish you very happy holidays, and thank you for following this earnings presentation. Well, I also would like to thank everyone and wish you very happy summer holidays. And I just would like to emphasize, as José Luis has mentioned, the great diversification of Mapfre's business model. We're in many different countries, in many different business lines. And I'd like to emphasize, because it's not common when you are in so many countries and in so many different business lines, that they're all performing really well. All the regions where we work and all the business lines are performing really well, especially in technical terms, but also in financial terms. We're seeing positive trends. So I wanted to leave you with that note of optimism. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. There's one last question we're going to answer. Laura from El Mundo is asking, she says, since the inflation crisis is over, would you not increase your rates any further in the coming months? Well, Laura, you're right that the price hikes of the last years have been parallel to inflation. We've always tried to make sure the efforts we made in containing our expenses and costs, and you would notice that our cost ratios have come down, so we've not had to pass through all the effects of inflation to our customers as a result, but also because of the sophistication of our pricing strategies, we're able also to focus on those customers who have a worse risk profile. Having said that, it would seem that now things look more stable, both in terms of inflation affecting auto parts and so on. And in Spain, with the different tables, which seem to be under control in versus where they were in 23, 24. Of course, we're always keeping an eye on inflation with the caveats I mentioned that will be passed through to the rates. And if I may, José Manuel, I would say that the external factors we mentioned before related to the question about tariffs, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But what our Vice President has said, rightly, if internally everything's under control, we hope that external factors, geopolitical factors, will not affect inflation rates and have an impact on us and therefore our prices. Well, thank you both. And now, yes, thank you very much. And if you're going on holiday, enjoy your summer. And available if you need to ask us anything else. Thank you.